All right, so only a couple more games left in this review. Next up, we got number 12 Georgia Tech beating Duke 27-18. Georgia Tech 7-0 for the first time since 1966. Been nearly 60 years since Georgia Tech was 7-0, and they are this year. Let's go over the highest grade player, starting off with the Yellow Jackets. Their highest grade player was defensive tackle Matthew Alexander, 71.3. Taj Butler, the linebacker, 70.9. Jai Gilmore, the corner, 70.5. D tackle Jason Moore, 69.9. Jamal Haynes, 69.7. The actual highest grade player was their quarterback, Haynes King, 85.7. Let's go over to Duke with their highest grade players in the loss. Cooper Barkate with a career day, 87.3 grade for the wide receiver. Chandler Rivers, the corner, 72 grade. Your guy, Dalton, right here. Nate Shepard, the true freshman running back, 71.4. Landon King, the tight end, 71.4. Jaden Francois, the linebacker, 71.2. And Darian Menso with a solid 76.4 grade in the loss. What told the story for you in this game?
Actually, you want to go first because I think this goes a bit in sequence here, and I think it's going to start with what you have and just another game here with Duke and their missed opportunities.
Yeah, so Duke in the red zone. They had 5 trips to the red zone in this game, and Duke outscored the Yellow Jackets 18-7 on those 5 trips. And why are you saying, wait a minute, how did Georgia Tech scored? Well, on the 1-yard line, Duke fumbled the ball, and Georgia Tech returned it for a touchdown right there. So missed opportunities by Duke, I should say. The very next possession after that fumble for a touchdown, Duke botched a 39-yard field goal attempt on the 12-yard line. Then later on, they're going to go for it on 4th and goal from the 1-yard line later in the third quarter, but they had an illegal substitution penalty that backed them up, and they had to kick a field goal after that too. And also after that, too, Duke missed a 46-yard field goal later on in the game. Just so many mistakes for Duke, which has really plagued their season and why they've lost 3 games, I believe, so far, too. And again, credit to Georgia Tech for taking advantage of those mistakes and forcing those mistakes, too, including the biggest play of the game with the, 95-yard fumble return for a touchdown, too. But Georgia Tech played clean football in this game. Duke did not, and that's been the story of Duke's season so far.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. In big games they've played in, the Illinois game, the Tulane game, and now this one, Duke's hurt themselves. They've hurt themselves with turnovers. There's no question about it. I mean, then you talk about botching a field goal, that costs you 3 points. The substitution, like you mentioned, that costs you probably 4 points, right? I mean, you just think about the opportunities they're leaving out there, because for at least 2, if not 3 quarters of this game, you felt like, man, they're really dominating. If you just didn't look at the scoreboard and just look at how both teams, especially the offense and Darian Menso, were playing, you go, they're dominating this football game. Cooper Barkate's unstoppable. The passing game's getting going. The run game is solid enough. They've gotten better with that in recent weeks. And then you do all of that, and you leave the door open. And you leave the door open for a team in Georgia Tech who's as opportunistic as any in the country. And look, you go into the fourth quarter, and all of this happens. And Duke, you feel like they're playing so well. And Georgia Tech really hardly had the ball through 3 quarters. They hardly even had the football, and yet it's 10-10. And so what happens? Haynes King, you give him a chance. You give Haynes King a pulse, he's going to come out and kill you. You look at this Georgia Tech fourth quarter offensively. Entered it 10-10. Scored 17 points, an 80 team offensive grade, 213 net yards in the fourth quarter. They only had 178 in the first 3 quarters and 6 explosive plays in the fourth quarter alone. It's been shown time and again. Georgia Tech, it was the Colorado game when they were down early in their own turnovers. It was the Clemson game when Clemson couldn't put them away. Now it's this game. Georgia Tech, if they're behind, but if they're in a 1-score game and Haynes King can continue to do things as a dual threat player, they're going to find a way to beat you because they're experienced winning these big games now. And I think Duke, it's really hurt them this year in multiple big games that they have made their share of mistakes. And Georgia Tech usually is not a team that makes those same mistakes. And if they're in the ball game, they're going to find a way to beat you.
Yeah. So if you go perfect in the red zone in 5 opportunities, you would score 35 points. Duke scored half that. They scored 18 points and also let up 7 points in the red zone.
And 8 of them were a touchdown when the game was pretty much it was over. So I mean, you just look at the again, it just feels like deja vu with Duke is that they got a really talented football team on both sides of the ball. Their offense is awesome. Yeah. But in the biggest moments of these games, the Illinois game and this game especially, they just don't take advantage of the opportunities that talent gives them.
So I'll let you do your most impressive after. I want to get to mine real quickly, though, because Haynes King, I will say it right now, this is the Diego Pavia of the ACC right now.
Yep.
This guy, what he is doing for this program is unfreaking believable. And like Diego Pavia, he is the heart and soul of this Georgia Tech program right now. 116 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground. The next leading rusher was Jamal Haynes with only 29 yards on the ground. Also, an 86.7 passing grade, threw for 204 yards, one big-time throw, no turnover-worthy plays, and a 79% adjusted completion percentage. His 81% adjusted completion rate, which again, your completion rate plus any drops your receivers have, that's fourth among all quarterbacks in the country this season. He's the leader of this Georgia Tech team, who is 7-0 for the first time in nearly 60 years. And as long as Georgia Tech does not have a major screw-up the rest of the year, they probably will go to the college football playoff. They could even lose. They could lose to Georgia and the ACC title game and still probably get in. That's a lot like what SMU did last year, going 11-2 and making the playoff. Georgia Tech, if they at least win the rest of their ACC slate, which they should on paper, and even if they lose to Georgia and the ACC title game, Georgia Tech still probably will go to the playoff this year.
On paper being what it is, but their last 4 ACC games are Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, Pitt. And they should be favored in all 4 of those games. Pitt's been better lately with Mason Hyde still in there. NC State's got a dangerous offense, and that's on the road. There's 2 games, Cuse and BC. I would expect them to be heavily favored.
Yeah.
I mean, Georgia Tech this season, the way these games this Duke game was huge. The Clemson game, getting that win was huge. We saw them obviously get a big out of conference when they were behind against Colorado early. This team is set up right now. They are set up as well as any team in the country to make a playoff run. And let's be real, the way they played Georgia last year, and now that this year they're going to be at home, that game will be in Atlanta. That is not a given for the Georgia Bulldogs.
No, it's not.
I guarantee Georgia will be favored because that's just how these things go. But Georgia Tech can absolutely beat them. They proved that last year that they're a threat to them.
And how about this? I mean, shout out to Haynes King, obviously. Also shout out to his head coach, Brent Key, what he's doing in that program too. Because before he was hired, he was actually an assistant coach under Jeff Collins, the previous head coach. Jeff Collins went 3-9, 3-7, 3-9. Started off 1-3. Brent Key took over midway through the season and went 4-4 after that. Then after that, 7-6, 7-6, 7-0 right now. What he is doing at that program, immediately turning it around from a program under Jeff Collins that was going 3-9 basically every single year, and now all of a sudden they're a playoff contender a few years in, and they made 2 bowl games last year after not making a bowl game since 2018. I mean, it's just incredible what Brent Key is doing at that program right now.
Oh, it's unreal. I admire their ability, especially when you talk about some of those close games they've been in the past that they lost, even like last year's Georgia game or something like that, where you go, they are so battle tested. Right? And the only thing really sometimes I worry about with this Georgia Tech team is when they lean on Haynes King so heavily, and they didn't have to do it so much in this game, but when they leaned on Haynes King so heavily and he's hands on hips and he looks like he's out there at 75% and he's wearing down, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish this team could get an easy game just to give him a break, right? But, I mean, that's the one thing is he's going to try to will him through in the same way like you mentioned that Diego Pavia does for Vanderbilt. So, no, they've got an inside track right now, and it's about taking care of business, and I think Brent Key knows, hey, 1 week at a time. All right, good win, flush this one. We got Syracuse next week. Sorry. So I mean, just kind of that thing. It doesn't get any easier up there, but I think they're so well coached and they know who they are, and that's such a big part that I think we see with a lot of teams that we're talking about today.
And also, I'm not saying he deserves to be in New York or anything like that, but I do think Haynes King should get mentioned more often for Heisman conversation.
I think
probably top 10.
We mentioned a lot of guys the other day for Coach of the Year. Why is Brent Key not in there?
Sure.
I mean, if they run the table, let's just say they mess around and beat Georgia and they're 12-0 or 13-0.
Absolutely.
Why not Brent Key for Coach of the Year? Absolutely.
Yeah. Incredible job by Georgia Tech, just taking advantage of Duke's mistakes, though. 27-18 final score, and they are continuing their undefeated season right now. The first 7-0 start since in about 59 years, I should say, doing quick math right there. All right,